self-regulation. We all struggle, but we're all professionals and we're all holding professional jobs, and therefore we're doing okay. So I guess it's something to think about with self-regulation. It's a spectrum. And sometimes at the start of the day before your coffee, for example, you may not have the best skills, but a strategy uses coffee, and then you're a little bit more human and can talk to the world. So it's important to remember that, especially with the people that we see that may have extreme maladaptive skills with their self-regulation, that we need to think about what's going okay, what can we let just happen, and what do we need to really, target and look at for them, remembering at all times that we have varying self-regulation skills. Also, have a think about what you do to self-regulate. And you'll probably find that you all do or have lots of little things that you do that help you that you don't even probably acknowledge, or it's not part of your conscious mind. For example, anyone that went to university with me would know that I'm the token foot tapper. So my entire row used to know when I was trying to concentrate, because I would sit there and I would tap my feet. And I've realised over time, and as I've learnt more and more about self-regulation, emotional regulation, that was my way of kind of maintaining my alertness so I could try and concentrate to what's happening in front of me. I often also take a deep breath, for example, and when I get angry, or if I see some of my children get angry, I see that they can take a deep breath, and that helps to calm them down. As I said before, sometimes coffee's their vice, and that's what they need to help them maintain their regulation. Other people, it's alone time, camping, whatever. Everyone's different, but you'll actually find that all of you have different strategies that you already put in place to help you self-regulate. So for our visual learners out there, we're just going to pop on a YouTube clip that just gives a bit of an overview of what self-regulation is.
Approximately 1 child in every 100 is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. People with autism face challenges in 3 main areas: communication, social interaction, and behaviour. It doesn't matter what colour your skin is, or where you live, or whether you're rich or poor, autism doesn't discriminate, although boys are around 4 times more likely to be diagnosed than girls. It also affects millions of other people, like the friends and families of people with autism. This is my nephew.
Hi, my name's Kai Gwynn. I was born with autism.
Kai has always had autism, and he always will, and each stage of his life brings with it new challenges. When Kai was small, his mum found it hard to do everyday things like shopping. The different surroundings and strange noises caused a sensory overload. To onlookers, Kai was just a badly behaved child having a tantrum. The hardest part for Kai's mum wasn't his behaviour, it was knowing people were judging her parenting. Sometimes people would even tell her to control her son and that she was doing it all wrong. Today, Kai is navigating the stormy waters of adolescence, in some ways no different from any other teenager. He's interested in computer games, but for Kai, this isn't just a harmless distraction, it's an obsession. The games world is safe and comfortable and protects him from the complex social rules and rituals of the real world. While other kids learn this etiquette, Kai just doesn't get it. He couldn't simply go up to someone and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" He's left feeling awkward, isolated, and scared. As Kai gets older, he'll face the big stuff we all do, figuring out who he is, finding a job, falling in love. But for anyone with autism, these things can be harder. Kai is interested in many things. He's a passionate Gold Coast supporter. He likes animals. He's a keen gardener, and his fixation with games could be channeled into work. Whatever Kai ends up doing, he'll need stability and support. Routine is important to him, as it is to many people with autism, and change is hard to handle. Romance will require patience and a special acceptance, as Kai finds it hard to show how he feels. But he does feel, The same as me, the same as you. Kai's life, and the lives of millions of others with autism, can be made easier with a little more awareness, understanding, and friendship. Stop, Kai! Stop! Shout!
All right, so that was just, I guess, a bit of a visual summary of self-regulation, and I'm going to reiterate that a little bit more in the rest of my talk. So as I said in the video, there's two main components to what we know make up self-regulation. So the first one being executive functioning. Now that's the umbrella term for the brain's cognitive ability to control our thoughts and actions. So as it said in the video, it involves, in regards to self-regulation, it involves inhibitory control. So being able to go, you know what, I want to say this, but I know it's not socially acceptable, so I'm not going to say this. Working memory, so to be able to go, okay, I'm doing this, but I need to remember that something else is happening over here, so therefore I can work and do that. And flexible attention, which is quite similar. So I know that there is a really exciting game of soccer happening outside, but I have to listen and concentrate in class, so I can be flexible in my ability to attend to things. The second component of self-regulation is emotional regulation. That's the ability to monitor, evaluate, and modify the intensity of one's emotional responses. It also involves social cognition, so that's the ability to understand that others have different thoughts, feelings, and experiences from our own. Sensory processing. Sensory processing and modulation is often thought of as being the same as self-regulation, but I just wanted to add a slide in here just to, I guess, differentiate the difference between the two. So quite often, sensory processing and modulation can actually impact and result in some difficulties with self-regulation, but it doesn't have to. So that's something that's really important to remember. We know sensory processing and modulation is the ability to modulate the information that we get from our senses so that we can feel just right, or what we're hearing or what we're feeling or what's touching us is tolerable. Some people have difficulty, and again, sensory processing, like self-regulation, is a spectrum. So we have different levels of tolerance. Now, as I said before, it can contribute to someone's ability to self-regulate. So if they hear that ticking of the fan that no one else has ever heard before, and that really is, and then they've got difficulties with the flexible attention, with the working memory, and they have difficulties regulating how they're going to emotionally respond to that, then of course that's going to bring about issues of self-regulation, but it doesn't definitely mean it does. Token plug for OTs, feel free to go and get a sensory assessment if you feel like that may be contributing or be a part of what's happening with what you're seeing with the individual you have concerns about. What we know about effective self-regulated children is that they're able to stay on task better. They can resist distractions better. They can persist when tasks get tough. And they can respond to challenges appropriately. Self-regulation is quite well supported in the research. It's found that high academic achievements are more likely when interventions include self-regulation components. It's been found that self-regulation abilities have a stronger correlation with school readiness than IQ or entry-level reading or math skills. And research shows that teachers can have a positive effect on students' self-regulation skills. And I guess what this is telling us is that self-regulation, whilst there is an innate part of it, it is also something that is taught, and there's a huge environmental influence on it as well. And in some people, for example, the children that we generally tend to see, it's something that's not as innate and really needs to be explicitly taught and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced again to enable them to build the skills that they need. So we'll have a look at the milestones of self-regulation, because that's something I think that's really important, is actually to expect what is realistic for children that you see. So by 2 years of age, we expect children to be able to delay actions when requested by caregivers. Maybe not all the time, but have the ability to do that. And also to begin to behave according to caregivers or social expectations without the need for external motivators. By 3 years, we're expecting our kiddos to be able to express emotions, and this is a hallmark of co-regulation. By 4 years, we're expecting greater flexibility, expecting them to begin to use rules to guide behaviour and produce strategies to reduce tension and be able to reflect on their own behaviour. At the very starting stages, we're expecting this at children who are 4 years. By 6 years and over, we can slowly expect more and more for our students to really take on responsibility to manage their own needs with greater independence. And we know our brain continues to develop in the mid-20s, and to be honest, self-regulation can continually be taught and improved the older we get. There's no real age limit to that. One of the most important things I think that we all need to be thinking about is, just like early intervention is proven, we know that early intervention is vitally important for children, that is absolutely the same for self-regulation. So early intervention, the earlier that we can start to teach our children and have an influence on them, the easier it is for us to bring about change. Obviously, the older the child is, that neuroplasticity gets less, and it is harder for them to learn their own self-regulation skills. Okay, how do we assist children to develop their own self-regulation? As I said at the start, disclaimer, I'm not going to solve all your world self-regulation problems, but we can talk about some strategies and some ways to start to think about interpreting what you see a little bit differently, potentially. Number one, be a detective. I know that if I have any parent or if a teacher comes up to me and tells me about this horrific event that has happened, the first thing I always ask is what happened beforehand. Was there any triggers? Was there something different? And this is an easy question to ask, but in reality, it actually takes a lot for people to really break down what has happened beforehand to try and pick up on any kind of clues as to what could have caused this behaviour to occur. So what we ask parents, professionals, anyone in the child's life is to try and identify, and if the child's old enough, help them to try and identify what triggers or stresses are for them. We want to identify also, on the flip side, what helps them stay calm and alert. When are they okay? When can they kind of manage the world well? We need to work out what leaves them over-aroused and what leaves them under-aroused. Input from different people in the child's life is vitally important when completing this detective work. So for teachers, as the previous presentation we spoke about the power of parents, they know their children so well. Talk to the parents, and parents talking to teachers, talking to the therapist, whoever is in that child's life, grandparents, and try and get as many clues as possible about the individual and what has happened, what they've seen and what they've observed is really what is needed. It's not a one-person approach. It really has to be a team approach. And also, as I said, working with other professionals, so occupational therapists, psychologists, teachers, speech pathologists, the list is endless, to try and use them to help you analyse what your findings are to try and bring about any recommendations or solutions. So that's the number one paramount thing. And as I said before, it's not easy, and it often requires lots and lots of, analysis of what's happening beforehand, and also, writing down and working and seeing patterns if the behaviour's occurring quite regularly or has occurred numerous times. The second way is to help children and teach them about emotions. So helping children understand what emotions really are. And also, it's them knowing internally what emotions are. So this is I'm feeling happy, and that's what this feeling is. I'm feeling angry. That's why, my face feels like this, my muscles feel like this. It's because I'm angry. But also helping them read and understand emotions on other people. And also also understanding what the emotions they're feeling at the time and helping them then identify ways to deal with that. And obviously we need to think about that at an age-appropriate level. There's so many different fun and exciting ways that we can do this, and that's one of the cool parts of my job is I get to do that a lot with people. Obviously there's lots of naturalistic learning, so when we see that someone's sad, we talk about what we see, you know, that they're feeling sad and what their face is doing and why they might be feeling sad. Or we might watch movies, for example, and talk about, you know, the emotions that we're seeing in the movie and the characters of the movies or the cartoons. We do lots of books, so you've got specific books obviously on emotions and feelings, but we also just use everyday books, whatever's motivating for the child. If there's different emotions that are, I guess, portrayed by pictures or portrayed by the storyline, talk that through and highlight that with the children. So many different games you can play, like charades for emotions or drawing different pictures and then having to guess what that person is feeling. And of course there's the curriculum, so formal or more structured structured teachings like curriculums, Zones of Regulations one, Alerts another program. There's quite a few different programs out there that you can do with children to teach them more and more about their emotions. The other important thing is to teach children about perspectives as well. And sometimes we take for granted thinking that they will understand that, but in reality they don't. So understanding that just because I am beyond excited about this Spider-Man toy doesn't mean that Bobby Joe is overly excited about that Spider-Man toy and definitely wants to play that with me. So teaching children that just because they feel one way doesn't necessarily mean that other children or other adults feel the same way as they do. And whilst that kind of seems quite obvious, a lot of our younger children, that's quite a difficult concept for them to grasp. So number 3 is all about teaching strategies. Now strategies are really important, obviously, and quite often, as I discussed briefly, we've all kind of picked up through our lives on our own kind of different ways of having strategies to help us self-regulate. Children who have difficulty with these skills need to be explicitly taught these strategies, and this needs to be practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. The number one thing is you cannot teach a strategy when a child is in, you know, having an absolute awe and having so much difficulty with their own self-regulation. It's not an option. Don't use a time back off. You're wasting your energy. What you need to do is teach children about strategies when they're calm, when they're alert, make it fun. And then you need to practice at that and practice it in the car, in the classroom, on the way to school, on the weekends, all the time practicing different strategies when they're calm, so that when they do come to an event that they are struggling with their ability to self-regulate, they're able to actually implement that strategy because it's practice, it's routine for them, it's not really foreign. So that's the number one most important thing. And the other thing to think about is if you have children that have trouble with self-regulation, then they're probably not going to know, you know, even if you feel like you've practiced it 1,000,000 times with them, when they're stressed, they're probably not going to remember to do it. So initially as well, you're going to have to be there to prompt them. And like anything, we want to reach them here, not when they're at erupting volcano point. So the idea of strategies is to try and prevent that absolute, you know, huge self-regulation difficulty or episode for the child. When you start to see those triggers, those signs, get them to start to implement the strategies to prevent them from getting to that higher level. Some strategies, the world's your oyster with strategies, but some strategies we find work quite well is deep breathing, taking a break, going on a movement break, squeezing your hands and releasing, and heavy works. That's things like potentially doing like a wall push-up or lifting up phone books or some boxes of books, just to kind of get your muscles moving in there and getting that proprioceptive input. As an OT, I love deep breathing. I think it's the token strategy, and it's the one that I start to teach all of my children, because we always have breath. No matter where we are, what we're doing, we're jumping out of an aeroplane, we're sitting here in a conference room, we can always breathe. And it's a relatively subtle strategy that's not going to bring a lot of attention to us. So that's one thing that I would recommend always starting with and teaching, because no matter what, you've always got it with you. The number 4, back to strategies as well. One thing I think is important is to, if you're finding these strategies after time isn't working, is seeking other opinions as well. So one strategy isn't the be-all end-all. 3 strategies might not be the be-all end-all. But being able to work with professionals, especially if you're finding that you've done kind of a bit of teaching and you feel like it's not working, seeking professional help on that is really beneficial, because there might be a few different perspectives that you might not have thought of in regards to what strategies could be used. So the last thing now is, number 4 is consider environmental changes. So from a social environment point of view, look at, for example, who the child's sitting next to. Is that a trigger? Is that a stressor for them? Look at teaching or parenting styles as well. So communication, is it the way that potentially you're asking things that's bringing about these type of responses? Can you change, adapt, which is hard because often you're having difficulty self-regulating yourself, potentially if this child's not doing what they're meant to be doing. But is there ways that you can change your approach to be able to prevent these type of episodes happening? And lastly, of course, looking at the physical environment. So in the classroom, looking at the location of the child and thinking about equipment options. So headphones, fidget toys, there's so many different options on the market. Something about equipment options as well. Giving a child a fidget toy and expecting that just to work, unfortunately, doesn't work. It's something that needs to be taught and reinforced and practiced. So I guess it's, if you're going to trial something like this, then have some commitment to it. And just because it doesn't work the first couple of times, it's worth trialling multiple times to see whether it is, in fact, useful for the child. Just some basic advice, quite common knowledge when it comes to dealing with someone that's potentially having a huge amount of difficulty with their self-regulation. Number 1 is safety first. So always ensure that the environment is as safe as possible for the child and for other people. Limit verbals. So what we know is when we are stressed, and this is the same for us, so for anyone, all humans, when we are stressed, our ability to understand and communicate goes down. So limiting verbals is really important. Minimise what you say. It doesn't matter whether you're talking and tell them an absolute narrative, they're not going to understand it anyway. So try and just keep to certain words to try and get something for them to understand to help them regulate themselves a bit better. As I said before, it's not the time to teach. It's not a teachable moment. Where possible, and especially when you feel like the child can handle this, is validate their feelings. So sometimes that's things like, I can see that you were feeling really angry or that really upset you. And so I guess in their mind, teaching them that, oh, that's what I was feeling. And yes, you're right, you hit the nail on the head. You understand what's happening. Give time and space as much as possible, and at all cost, avoid power struggles. And as we've said before, after the child is settled, that's the time when you start to analyse what was happening before the occurrence and document it to look for behaviours. And that's one of the most important things as well, as I think, is documenting. And oftentimes we're busy, but trying to remember something, I don't remember what I did this morning, let alone something that might have happened like a week ago. So just jotting down a few points, you'll be amazed at how powerful that can be. And also, it can also, I've had feedback from teachers that they said when they jotted down, when they look back at it, when they went to jot down the next episode, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. But that was there as well. So they picked up on patterns through having it documented for them. I've also just got some useful websites, so if we need to, I'm sure we can get these slides out somehow. So there's a number of, the internet, Google, the world's your option when it comes to self-regulation. There's so many different websites and resources available, but these are some of the ones that I found particularly useful and probably a little bit more credible. And yeah, it's I guess a combination of different resources as well as just information and recommendations as well. So there's another one, and I think then it's just references. And any comments or questions? You're a nice, easy. Oh no, go for it. Doesn't have autism. So Autism Queensland's a not-for-profit organisation, but we are fee-paying, but we do see children who don't have a diagnosis of autism. As we know, autism is a spectrum, so there's a variety of skills that's needed to see children with autism. So yes, we're very happy to take on any diagnosis, really. Sorry? And non-diagnosed. Any other questions or anything? Lovely, thank you.
Hello everyone. I'll just take a moment to get my slides on their way, I hope. It looks closer to it. Now, I've actually Sometimes I'm really quite anxious, like tonight. And so I'm just going to read to you my presentation, partly because there's a lot of information in it and I want to get the words right and not waffle on, because I'm very good at waffling. And also because I've taken some time to try to turn what can be a very complex issue into something that you guys hopefully can put all of the blocks together and come out with your own understanding and idea of where nutrition sits in early life. So my topic is the first 1,000 or so days. As Wendy said, I'm a rural GP obstetrician. I wanted to be a country doctor that delivered babies since medical school, and so all of the training I've ever done has been, since about third-year medical student, since I was about 18 years old, has been because I wanted to be a country doctor that delivered babies. But since in that time, medicine at the coalface of general practice, obstetrics and neonatal care has changed significantly. And the training that I did back in the 1990s only partly reflects what we see now. And for the past 5 years, I've developed my interest in nutritional and environmental medicine. The field is burgeoning, which is related to science's evolving ability to look at our world on a molecular level, and also the internet and the fact that scientific information